Is this thing on?
Are you ready, Matt?
You're listening to Box Office Bingers
with Matt Diaz and Ernesto Santos.
Good evening, folks. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Box Office Bingers.
And the only way that I know how to do it is to find you a bloody good dump.
He's my friend. I don't have friends. I got family. I can do this all day.
You know, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
You know, Matthew, I'm hoping we can do this review kind of like the star of our movie, just a man of few words. Sir, I'm very excited to talk about this week's movie.
I don't think we can talk about this movie in a few words. I mean, we could try, but this is a jam-packed episode, Ernesto. It's going to be hard to say completely nothing because that's what he did. He said nothing.
Yeah, he said a few things
of the movie
towards the end. Very limited.
He said like two sentences and a lot of grunts.
That's true.
A lot of
and yelling.
And yelling. Yes, lots of yelling. I'm also very excited to talk to you about Sisu, our foreign film of the month. It's a Finnish film. Probably Finnish? Finnish?
Yeah.
Finnish, yeah.
We'll go with that.
Finnish film from Finland. And it was released last year in the U.S., but I think it actually premiered back in 2022 at a film festival, and then it wasn't released until 2023. And it's been on the radar for quite some time for us. And then I think we always prioritize other films before this, but now we finally got around to it. And even so much so that a sequel is already in the works for this movie. So I don't know when that's coming out, but this movie came out again last year, so they're already working on a sequel. It's starring Jorma Tomala and written and directed by Jalmari Hylander. He also wrote and directed the movie Big Game, which was an indie flick starring Samuel L. Jackson. I think I remember watching it, or at least being familiar with it. I couldn't tell you what the movie was about, but it was like him in the wilderness, and like some kid was like helping him. I think Samuel Jackson was playing the president or some type of government official, and some kid in the wilderness was helping him through that while he was like trapped in the, like, maybe I think his plane crashed or something. And either way, I think I did watch it. I remember it being like a fun movie, and I think that type of energy was definitely brought in this movie for sure. But yeah, it's been a while since we discussed a foreign film. I know we talked a lot during the Oscar season. We discussed a lot of foreign film, and then as soon as the Oscar season was over, we went right into our blockbusters with Dune 2, and then it was Ghostbusters, and then it was Godzilla, and then all the other movies that came out in April and May. So it's been a minute, so I'm glad we're able to find some time to get back to form as we try to cover at least one of these a month. Yeah. So it's nice to go back to that. But with all of that, though, we did say this was jam-packed, and there is a lot of news to discuss. And we're gonna kick it off with this happened about 2 weeks ago at the time of this recording, during the Upfront 2024 presentations event to advertisers last month. Movie studios gathered to make a few announcements. And what I find interesting, Ernesto, before I dive into this, is that what certain studios decide to make the big announcements at which events. Like we were actually talking about CinemaCon a few weeks ago, and we saw that Paramount Pictures, like for them, that was the one that they were going to announce all of this stuff at. Like here you go, CinemaCon. We're going to give you a nice wealth of information that's coming out of our studio. And then we get to this upfront presentation, and Paramount Pictures is like nowhere to be found.
Well, it makes sense, because now maybe instead of everybody, dropping everything at Comic-Con or whatever big con it is, these little like marketing events where they can like be solely the sole vision instead of competing with other news from other studios seems to be this will work because there's space for everybody. We don't need to have everybody compete. We can just enjoy it all.
And honestly, it's breaking news regardless, no matter where you say it. I mean, you don't need to be like in front of a crowd in order to announce something big. So I wonder if all the studios kind of talk to each other. It's like, hey, you Paramount, you guys can have CinemaCon, but Amazon, we're gonna take Upfront if you guys don't mind. And so I just find that it's kind of interesting of how that all plays out. But nonetheless, we're gonna start with Amazon MGM Studios, who during their presentation announced a bunch of upcoming projects. The biggest one that MGM Plus and Amazon Prime Video announced is that they're giving a season order to a live-action Spider-Man Noir series titled Noir, here's the big news, with Nicolas Cage once again playing Spider-Man Noir. Cage previously voiced Spider-Man Noir in the Academy Award-winning animated film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This would be the first time the character is portrayed in a live-action project. The official log line reads, the story of an aging and down on his luck private investigator in 1930s New York who is forced to grapple with his past life as the city's one and only superhero. Harry Bradbeer, who directed Eleanor Holmes 1 and 2, and also most episodes of Fleabag, will executive produce and direct the first 2 episodes, as previously reported back in February of 2023. So that's how long this has been in development when we first talked about this project, and now it seems like it's getting the green light and is officially moving forward. But Joran Uzel, the writer behind 22 Jump Street, Mortal Kombat, and The Lost City, will serve as writer and executive producer, along with the Punisher creator Steve Lightfoot. I believe that is also new information. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse producers Phil Lord, Christopher Miller, and Amy Pascal will also serve as executive producers.
That's good to know.
All that, Ernesto. How does this sound to you?
Well, that was going to be my first question, is what is the connection to the Spider-Verse universe? But it seems like it will be like adjunctly connected, like where it's adjacent, I guess is a better word I should say. Which is fine. I mean, it'll be cool because we don't need to see him because he'll be in his mask and his outfit.
True.
Like, and not that matters, but I don't know. That was like my one thing because it's live action, so I'll check it out. I'm not like gonna watch it week to week. Like, I'll probably hit it up eventually, but I'm interested. I'm interested to see what comes out of this. I like Nick Cage and like 90% of the things that he's in.
So what you're telling me is that you're not going to be signing up for MGM Plus in order to watch
Correct.
this. But you will check it out maybe or whenever it decides to release on Prime Video.
Yeah, I'm not going to pay for another streaming service, not unless I absolutely, I don't know. I don't know if there's another, what it would take to get me to go on board for another streaming service. I already have a hard enough time keeping up with the ones that I already have.
Yeah, that's a good point. And like MGM Plus is, I'm sure they have a couple of things that a lot of people enjoy on there. But I can't see myself at the same token. They're like, oh, well, it'll be on MGM Plus first. And they did the same thing with American Fiction. That movie was also first it was streaming on MGM Plus, and then like 2 months later they put it on Prime Video. And so it's like we ended up seeing it in theaters for our Oscar coverage, but at the same time, even if I didn't see it in theaters, I think I would have just waited. We don't know how long it's going to take for it to go to MGM Plus to Prime Video, but like I wasn't going to sign up for another streaming service to watch the movie, knowing that eventually it's going to be on Prime Video.
Exactly. Like why? Yeah. What's the rush?
Yeah, seriously. But I am intrigued by this. They could pull a Mandalorian to what you were talking about earlier, where it's him in the suit the entire time, and then it's just really you're just hearing his voice, which maybe that's the angle he's going for. I know Nicolas Cage is getting up there in age, and so I'm not sure how physical this role is going to be, or if it's just more of like a comedic private eye 1930s, like wit that we had in the animated movie.
Probably a little bit of, maybe a little bit darker version than the movie. That's a kind of feel that I would hope that they would go for, because that seems like it would make sense.
But honestly, if you're bringing in a Nicolas Cage, one would assume that this is the same character from the animated movie. Not to say that it exactly is, but I mean, if you're going to go out of your way to make a live action series and you're bringing back the same guy, then I'm going to assume that some of the characteristics that we've seen in Spider-Verse will kind of translate over to a live action version. I will be curious if they go with more of a serious tone or not, though, because his character was very, comedic in Spider-Verse. But yeah, I'm okay with this. I'm not like I agree with you. I'm not going to be diving into MGM Plus to watch this immediately. But when it hits Prime Video, it's superheroes. It has my attention.
Yeah. A general interest.
A general interest, yes. But stepping away from the upfront presentation for just a moment. So this is kind of a piece of sad news that came following a couple days after this announcement that they kind of greenlit the Noir. So just days after the Noir TV series announcement and basically giving it the green light, it was later reported that the Silk Spider Society live action series is no longer moving forward at Amazon. The show was originally greenlit in November of 2022 in a deal with Sony Pictures Television to develop a suite of shows based on Marvel characters that Sony controls. It was meant to debut on MGM Plus linear channel domestically before the global launch on Prime Video. The Walking Dead producer Angela Kang was on board as executive producer and showrunner, with Kang also signing a multi-year overall deal with Amazon MGM Studio in the process. Kang will, however, though, continue under that deal. So I guess she's just no longer working on this project. According to an individual with knowledge of the situation, Sony will try to shop the series to other buyers. The official logline release at the time of the series order stated that the show would follow Cindy Moon, and who is described as a Korean American woman bitten by the same spider that bit Peter Parker, as she escapes imprisonment and search for her missing family on her way to becoming the superhero known as Silk. I am a little bit disappointed that this show isn't moving forward, given that it almost seemed like that they had a choice to make. Like they either had to move forward with one Spider-Man series over the other, and MGM and Amazon were not willing to move forward with both shows.
And then the safer bet is, of course, a Nick Cage Spider-Man series over introduction of a new character. Well, not new, but at least new to the film, the live action film and TV series world.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, maybe they're not willing to take gambles. Maybe it's not to. It's hard to ignore the fact that this was a diverse character, that of a Korean woman, no less, and they chose to not move forward with that show, and instead move forward with the all-white American version of the show instead of getting some diversity in there. I honestly, when I first heard this announcement, this sounded different. This sounded new. Yeah. This was interesting to me. Honestly, this show sounds more interesting than a Spider-Man Noir film, because I feel like when that announcement was made, I already knew kind of what we were getting. Yeah. Because we got a little taste of it from Spider-Verse. And so, either you're going to go darker or similar. I already had some expectations and some, pre-notions going into that series. But with this one, I know very little about the character. So I feel like you had a lot of bigger range to go off of what you can actually do to make this your own. So it's kind of sad that, at least at this moment, it's not, well, we know it's not moving forward with Amazon. I really hope that Sony can maybe find a potential buyer, because, it's nonetheless, it's a Spider-Man show. Yeah.
It would be great to see this project come back, but hopefully time will tell.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, I mean, think about other places that this could go. I think Netflix could sweep this up easily. Yeah, easily. But yeah, like you said, time will tell. But to me, it was a little bit disappointing to hear this news. That honestly would have felt like one had to fall in order for the other one to get pushed forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, well, moving away from sad news. Thanks, Matthew. Getting all depressing and shit. Either way,
yeah.
Other announcements from Amazon MGM Studios at Upfront 2024 presentations were: a Legally Blonde prequel series titled Elle is officially in the works for Prime Video. The series will follow Elle Woods in high school as we learn about the life experiences that shaped her into the iconic young woman we came to know and love in the first Legally Blonde film. Reese Witherspoon will serve as an executive producer under her Hello Sunshine production company. Amazon Studios and Crystal Dynamics are officially teaming up to expand the Tomb Raider universe. Phoebe Waller-Bridge will serve as writer and executive producer for the new upcoming series coming to Prime Video. Jake Gyllenhaal is set to reprise his role as L. Dalton in a Roadhouse sequel. Matt, your favorite movie? I bet you can't wait till that one comes out.
So, okay. I'm actually honestly surprised about that one. The fact that very quickly they signed on for a sequel. I don't know if it was already in the works. I don't know if it's like getting Jake Gyllenhaal to be in your next movie is like a good get for Amazon.
Probably.
Maybe it hit the streaming numbers pretty well. I know the director was pretty like, he was very vocal about how his movie was not hitting theaters. So I'm very curious if he's going to come back and direct the sequel to it. I wasn't a huge fan of this movie.
I remember.
Yeah, so I was like, sure, why not? And then quickly going back to the other two you mentioned, I don't know if anyone's looking for a Legally Blonde prequel series set with Elle Woods in a high school setting, but then again, I'm obviously not the target audience for that series, but maybe the fans of Legally Blonde can find some humor and some, just go back into the world. They have prequel series on literally everything else, so why not Legally Blonde?
How many Legally Blonde movies are there? Are there 2? There 3?
I think there's 2 with Reese Witherspoon. I think there were more after that. I just don't think she was involved in those sequels. And they might have done like a younger version or a reboot later down the line. But I honestly couldn't tell you.
There's 1 and 2, and then what's Legally Blonde? What is that? I don't even think I've ever. That looks like a straight to
DVD.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. And they have the Broadway show. I mean, it is.
Oh, that's
it
right.
Is, and I'm not for nothing. The musical is actually pretty good. The music's in it. Esteban got me hooked on it. I mean, it was when it came out. It's good. It's very entertaining. So I mean, I could see it. Like, to me, when I hear Legally Blonde, I think of the same vein of like Mean Girls.
Yeah.
Like where that like the people who like that movie probably also like this movie as well. Like it's the same audience. The both films have the same kind of vibe, same kind of feel.
Sure.
I mean, they're literally both musicals now. They were both movies, seriously. And they both became musicals. So,
and honestly, to your point, like with that longevity, like this Legally Blonde prequel series following an Elle Woods in high school. Then it goes back to a Mean Girls vibe, which was also taking place in high school. So maybe they got something going there.
Maybe.
And Reese Witherspoon, not for nothing, but she has produced some interesting projects down the line. I'm pretty sure her Hello Sunshine is also a production company involved with the morning show. So like her as a producer, she's put some interesting work out there. So yeah, I mean, who knows? I probably won't be watching this, but again, it's why not? Yeah. At this point, why not? And I think we also talked about very briefly a couple of months ago that Phoebe Waller-Bridge was going to be expanding Tomb Raider, and I think this is Amazon just making the official announcement that it is happening.
Yeah, I mean, because we saw her exit, which we're also going to talk about, because she was originally supposed to be in Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Donald Glover.
Yeah,
and I believe she left that project to go do this. What I'm assuming to go take over this,
but I think there was also some creative differences in that show as well. So I think it was a mix of like creative differences and maybe she had something else lined up. I don't know. It still doesn't say if I think they would have said it then that Phoebe Waller-Bridge will just serve as a writer and executive producer. So I doubt that she's starring in it. So I wonder if they're looking for like the next Tomb Raider to move forward, which is also interesting because I just saw a trailer that there's going to be a Tomb Raider anime series hitting Netflix later this year.
See, and I'm more interested in that than I am this series. Like a Tomb Raider anime series, that seems very fitting for that. But I mean, this could work too. But did you ever like the Angelina Jolie movies?
I honestly couldn't tell you anything about them. Like I might have watched them when I was younger, but I never went back and watched them as an adult, so I couldn't tell you. And then I vaguely remember the reboot that came out a few years ago. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the games, though. I've played everyone I shouldn't say everyone, but when they rebooted the video game series, they came out with 3 games. I don't know what the titles were, but I played all 3 of those games, and I enjoyed every one of them. So
those games, they're like very similar to that other game, Uncharted. That's kind of what it reminds me of. Is that why you like it?
And that's why.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Uncharted is my favorite video game series, and so to me, it was like, oh, it's the same thing, just Tomb Raider. And I'm sure Uncharted took a lot of inspiration from Tomb Raider.
I'm sure.
So it's all the same stuff, and so like to me, that's my bread and butter. Like, oh, that's my game right there. So it was great that every couple, because they always like alternated every couple of years. So every couple of years, I just got the same thing, and I was happy about it. But yeah, I remember enjoying those games a lot. And so why not? Phoebe Waller-Bridge, she's a great creator. I never watched Fleabag, but a lot of positive stuff about it. So she's just sticking her deal with Amazon and creating more content, and I'm 100% okay with that.
That's one of those shows that I think eventually I do want to eventually get to, just because it has so much praise. But I remember I tried to watch it. I watched like the first 20 minutes, and then I became disinterested. But maybe I need to give it another go around. But
same here.
But keep it in the same vein with Amazon. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which we just mentioned, has been renewed for season 2. Holla, great season, loved it. Sources say that season 1 stars Donald Glover and Maya Erskine are not expected to return to star in season 2, and it will act as an anthology series, which is really interesting because then now the ending of season 1 hits. If they're not coming back, then you almost have to go back and reevaluate the end of the season, because it ended on a point where you assume that we're going to come back. But now, now you have to look at the season differently, like almost as like, okay, well, that was the end of their chapter. Well, damn, that was dark.
Yeah, when you think about it that way. I mean, and they say that they're not, there was no official announcement that they weren't returning. It was just sources were saying that they weren't expected to return. And honestly, I respect the anthology. Like, honestly, when I heard about this, I was like, an anthology series. Okay.
Keeps it fresh. Keeps it interesting.
Keeps it fresh, yeah. And also, I gave so much respect now for the first season because how well that ending was.
I agree.
Like, I really enjoyed the ending, expecting, maybe to get something out of it. But now, like, I'm okay by this. I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, that show already introduced a world where there were multiple Mr. and Mrs. Smiths. So why not explore other relationships throughout this program? And then, who knows? Maybe we'll go back to Donald Glover and his story. But if we don't, then we kind of just leave with this mystery of, kind of determine your own ending to that. And it was like an interesting and kind of, for me, satisfying cap to the season.
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay with that.
I agree 100%. So Netflix, Will Ferrell is set to star and...
No, you
excuse me. I did miss one. Damn it.
Yeah.
Well, The Boys has been renewed for season 5 ahead of the season 4 premiere. I
there
failed.
You go.
I'm sorry. But that's also exciting news. I mean, obviously.
That is exciting news, yeah.
What's just a side note, just talking about The Boys and Gen V with the recent actor's death. Oh my God, it's going to kill me. I'm going to look it up real quick. The name of the actor who passed away. Chance Perdomo. When he died in his motorcycle accident, there was like so much back and forth about what to do with the with the next season, but I think they finally landed on that they are going to continue, and they're gonna write it into the show that about his passing, which which is so intriguing. I think that's so interesting to see, like, that they felt that they could have that conversation, because this is one of those instances where they try to do the AI thing, or they get somebody that looks like him to finish out the season. But I guess maybe since they were so early on in writing and conception, that they we're at a point where they could just rewrite the script. But it'll be interesting to watch that season, because then you're going to watch it knowing that this is the way this is because this person died in real life. Isn't it? That's so crazy. That's just crazy to think about. But
it is interesting when studios kind of make a choice. Like we saw it with Paul Walker and the Fast franchise. We saw it with Black Panther: Wakanda Forever when Chadwick Boseman passed away, and now we're seeing it again with Gen V. And like, it's interesting to see how studios decide to kind of move on with a character when that actor has passed away in real life. And in an odd way, the Fast franchise decides to keep that character alive but just not show it. I feel like there's been a lot of time that has passed that at some points it's becoming a weird gimmick. Where it's like you honored them like in a way that was, respectful, and now, at least for the Fast franchise, like you keep mentioning him and bringing him up as like eventually you're just gonna have to let it go, like to kind of move on from it. And then you saw how they dealt with it with Marvel and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, where that was like the identity of the whole movie. Was the passing of Chadwick and the Black Panther. And so I honestly respect it in a way. It's like it seems more respectful to have the character die in the show and have them move on with that, rather than just simply recasting a character. And it just feels more genuine that way, and it felt like that you took the time to kind of write it in there, and so it feels organic instead of like, well, we are so sad that he passed away, but now here's the new actor that's going to replace him. It doesn't feel right.
100%. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the Boys universe, especially since they are going to continue to make more seasons, with season 5 coming out and the additional season of Gen V.
I think the Boys has been killing it lately. Like, they've been doing some great work in that show, and I feel like they just keep going up from here. And with every season, I'm just more excited to see. And obviously, this is Amazon's flagship show going on right now, so they're giving it all the money.
Yeah, exactly. Moving over to Netflix, Will Ferrell is set to star and serve as co-creator in his first ever scripted comedy series called Golf. Will Ferrell will play a fictional golf legend in the 10-episode comedy. I mean, I'm on board. I love me some Will Ferrell. So, but to me, I'm skeptical because it could really go either way. Because look at Steve Carell in Space Force. I had high hopes, and that was actually garbage.
it was big garbage. And we'll talk about Steve Carell later, actually. But I'm surprised to hear that this is Will Ferrell's first ever scripted comedy series. Yeah. And I was like, this is no way his first TV show. There's no way.
He's made guest appearances on other shows, but not him as the main lead.
Well, I didn't know. Well, I guess when the key word there is comedy series, because he was also in that show with Paul Rudd that was on Apple TV Plus. I'm pretty sure. We just didn't watch it. I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but it was
The Shrink Next Door.
The Shrink Next Door. Yeah, he starred in that.
But I guess that wasn't his show.
Well, technically, I mean, I think it wasn't a comedy series. So
yeah, that's true.
This is being touted as a comedy series. So it's like, okay.
All right.
Legalities. Sure.
Kate Hudson will star as the lead in Running Point, a new comedy series from Mindy Kaling, set in the unpredictable male-dominated world of sports. Okay. Jamie Foxx and Cameron Diaz are set to star in the upcoming film Back in Action, premiering on Netflix November 15. The film follows former CIA spies that are pulled back into espionage after their secret identities are exposed. Seth Gordon, Horrible Bosses, and Four Christmases, Identity Thief, and Baywatch will write and direct the film. That seems interesting. That kind of like a buddy comedy kind of deal. I'm sure.
Yeah, I think the big thing out of that as well is that Cameron Diaz has not starred in a movie in almost 10 years. Her last movie was in 2014, and she did Annie. And then also in the same year, she did Sex Tape and The Other Women. And so just looking quickly at her IMDb, so she has been on a hiatus for quite some time acting, like I said, 10 years. So I remember reading an article when this movie was kind of first announced that like Jamie Foxx did a lot to try to bring her on and kind of convince her to get back into acting, because I believe it felt like that she had retired. So I'm looking forward to see her back, as the title suggests, back in action, and kind of like see, how she's been all these years. It's almost probably in a different effect, but like Lindsay Lohan has recently been getting a resurgence because she's took a break from acting after all this time. So, so yeah, good for her for coming back into acting, because I think this is a fun premise. And Seth Gordon, again, I really enjoyed Four Christmases. We watched that movie every year, and I also really enjoyed Horrible Bosses. So it seems like a pretty solid comedy going through Netflix as we enter Thanksgiving.
It seems like it's got a good home too. Like that seems to be a good place for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Three Body Problem has been renewed for new episodes, bringing the epic story through its mind-blowing conclusion. It was later confirmed to be renewed for season 2 and 3. Matthew, I know you're excited. So I guess when I watch it, I'm just gonna wait. I'm just gonna wait till this is done.
Well, what's crazy about it is that when Netflix made this announcement, they said it was like, we renewed it for new episodes, and everyone was like, well, what the hell does that mean? Like, what do you mean new episodes? It's like, we're going to bring the show to a conclusion. So I read it as, so when I first saw the show and I watched the whole first season, I did a slight deep dive into it. And they said that it was based off of 3 books. And the creators, who also created Game of Thrones, wanted to adapt every book, a season a book. And they wanted to hopefully get this show to its conclusion. So then I was like, okay, so they were looking at least 3 seasons. And this was a very expensive show to make. And so then when Netflix announced that, hey, we're bringing the show back, it's renewed for new episodes. I'm like, okay, maybe Netflix is like, hey, we'll give you more episodes, but we're not going to give you full seasons, and therefore we're just giving you enough episodes to wrap up your story. That's how I took it at first. And then about a week or two later, the creators were like, no, we got renewed for season 2 and 3. And so in my head, it's like, why don't you say that? It's like, why are you making things so complicated?
Why you gotta make things so complicated?
There you go. Exactly.
Okay, I'm done.
Listen to the words.
And Netflix will be and then finally with Netflix, it will be the home to watch the NFL's 2024 Christmas Day games live. Netflix is really honing in on live entertainment. They're getting the NFL games. They've been doing so many comedy specials, and then I think I saw they did one of the live. They did one of their reunions. They did live for one of their was it The Circle? It was one of those shows that you watch.
Yeah,
one of those reality TV shows.
And they're also they have that Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight that's going to be live as well. That is
going to be to me, that's probably the biggest one, is the Jake Paul Tyson fight that's coming. That's this month, next month.
Coming soon. I think it's next month, if not later this month. But actually, I think it's next month. But either way, like that's pretty big for Netflix to start diving into live content like that.
July 20th is the
July 20th. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty big for Netflix. Honestly, I think getting the NFL Christmas game days,
that's a biggie.
Huge. That is huge. Like, having a fight on there for Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, it is a big deal. But when you said that, hey, sports fans, on Christmas Day when you want to watch some football, well, you can't find it on cable at all. Instead, you have to go to Netflix to get all your game day coverage live. That to me is like that's just as a baller move as Amazon kind of signing a massive deal with the NFL to have all Thursday night games. And so this is just, we talked about this is another way for sports kind of weaning its way into the streaming world.
Breaking away, another break from cable.
Yeah. And honestly, when you think about it, it wasn't NFL having to conform to the streaming services. It was the streaming services had to conform to live television. And when they opened up that door, then they were able to have those conversations like, oh, yeah, no, we could do live. And then they're like, oh, okay, then now we can start having that conversation. So honestly, a pretty big, a lot of decent announcements coming out of Netflix. And honestly, I'm going back quickly to Three Body Problem. I'm excited that a show that I started that I had a lot of confidence in, and I thought had a lot of potential, is going to actually see its conclusion. So that makes me feel good as a viewer to know that, something that I actually enjoyed will actually have a conclusion in the coming years.
Yeah. And I'll definitely watch it now that I know that it will be complete. And if it's good enough, then maybe I'll read the book, which is what probably their creator's goal anyway. So I'm here for it. I mean, Netflix is definitely leading the charge. Well, they have to with the amount that they're charging everybody. So they have to make it worth it.
And honestly, when you make certain, decisions like that, then there's only a few brief incidences where I'm like, you know what, maybe it is worth the price. Because you're putting out some bangers. Like, I mean, even the roast of Tom Brady, that was huge. Yeah. That was live. I didn't watch it live, but I ended up watching a good majority of it, and it was pretty entertaining. And for people who did watch it live, that was a big success for Netflix. And so they're seeing a lot of value in live content. Almost as like there's years of live television to confirm that.
Exactly. Certain people just really like live TV. Who would have thought?
Pretty much. Who would have thought?
All right. Warner Brothers Discovery giving some release dates for their upcoming film. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, starring Millie Alcock, will officially hit theaters June 26, 2026. Mortal Kombat 2 will hit theaters October 24th, 2025. I mean, there's both excited for both of these films. Probably more excited for Supergirl, but I enjoyed the first Mortal Kombat. I think it's a fun series, so I'm excited to watch that second one when it comes out. And I believe the first one was a COVID release, and wasn't it on streaming that we watched it?
It was both.
So it'll be.
It was in 2021 when they dropped. It was like when HBO Max was doing their like in theaters and on Mac or HBO Max at the time.
So what will be interesting for that one, we'll see what the difference is. Seeing that I don't know if they're going to do another dual release. Probably looks like maybe they might just do a theatrical release and then drop on the streaming service. So I'll be curious to see how that one does when it does release. Universal.
And
go ahead.
Sorry, and also I think it's good to know that like DC is kind of full steam ahead because we know that Superman comes out next year in July, and now we see that the next movie up on the docket we knew that it was going to be Supergirl, but now we have a release date on it, and it's only going to be a year away after Superman. So at least it's not like looks like at this point 2025 is going to be the start of the train, more or less. And so now I'm assuming that at least once a year or maybe twice a year, we'll get a DC movie moving forward starting in 2025.
Yeah. And lastly, Universal and Blumhouse just announced some release dates for their upcoming films. Megan 2.0 will hit theaters June 27, 2025. Black Phone 2 will hit theaters October 17, 2025. And Five Nights at Freddy's 2 will hit theaters December 5th, 2025. That's a really strange release date. Like, that should be a Halloween. That's kind of...
I mean, if you think about it, like, even Megan 2.0 getting a summer release, it did as well as it did because it came out in January when not a lot of big movies were coming out. I don't know if I would technically count Megan 2.0 as like a summer film to go watch, but I think in some ways they're maybe taking a gamble on that because of the success of the first movie. And then the Black Phone, which hit a summer release when it was back in 2022, they're now giving it that Halloween slot, which is also interesting to your point, given the Five Nights at Freddy's sequel December release, I would have 100% given that October release to Five Nights at Freddy, given the success that you had previously. So I don't know. That's an interesting move. We said the same thing about Kraven the Hunter hitting that December release date as well. That's coming this year. So I don't know. Maybe they're banking on something that's there, but December for Five Nights at Freddy's an interesting release for sure.
It's a strange one.
And the last bit of news coming out of the Upfront presentation is from Marvel Studios with the Agatha Harkness series starring Catherine Hahn is officially titled Agatha All Along and will premiere on Disney Plus on September 18th. What was very interesting about this announcement was that throughout the months, a lot of news reports kind of, at this point it turns into a joke, but I remember news reports saying like, what's going on with Agatha series? Like first it was called this, then it was called like the Heart of Harkness or the Heart of Harkness, and then it was called like the Darkhold Diaries, and then when Disney and Marvel made the announcement, they went through all of the different titles that were kind of announced or like leaked out there. Even one of them was like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe or something, and I was like, there's no way they're gonna make that the title. That seems ridiculous. And then during their promotion they kind of like revealed that it was like this was a title, this was a title, this was a title, and then the official title was Agatha All Along. And I was like, man, Marvel was just trolling everybody, and it's hilarious.
Were they, or was it that they didn't know? You think that they knew, or you think that they were figuring it out? I mean, just given all the background news of what was going on at Marvel, it just seems like it was Agatha all along who was fucking up the MCU and why everything sucked, because it was Agatha all along. I don't know.
I don't know about like the entire MCU, but I would like to hope that this was a very clever marketing campaign for this Agatha series. But to your point, they could have just played it off as like, we did have multiple titles and then we stuck on this one, and we're just going to pretend that all the other ones were just Agatha all along. I don't know. I want to live in the world where they were trolling everybody, because that makes me laugh more than the fact that Marvel didn't know what they were doing.
Exactly.
And also they announced that Daredevil Born Again series will release March 2025 on Disney Plus. That was honestly a lot sooner than I was expecting, so that's very exciting. And then the Ironheart series will officially release in 2025 on Disney Plus, which a lot of people were skeptical about that was going to be the chopping block.
Yeah. I almost forgot about it.
Yeah. Obviously, as we pointed out, Marvel's in this restructuring process. So yeah, it's nice to get some confirmation that some of the shows that were announced years ago are now either getting titles or are still moving forward. I still don't see the relevancy with Agatha All Along. So I guess, we'll have to see a trailer or, actually wait until the show comes out to get some official confirmation on that. On like what this show is actually about and what this has to do with the MCU. But I think obviously the big show that everyone's waiting for is Daredevil. Yeah,
clearly,
without a doubt. I think it was also during this presentation where they kind of like they had Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox out there and were like, I think they were also talking about in interviews, and they were saying that, in the previous iteration, there were like 0 ties to the Netflix series. And then they're like, now with the rewrites, there's like all these ties to the Netflix series. So I think they realized that they had to embrace what was already there and just expand on that.
Yeah, exactly. The Netflix series is so good, and you already have it as part of your library.
Right.
So it's an easy connection, and then you can have people watch both.
Yeah. Well, you already took it from Netflix. You already have it. Just embrace what you took.
Exactly.
So in other news, stepping away. Before I say all that, so that was all the Upfront 2024 presentation news from there. So it was kind of a lot that just came out of that presentation. But in other news, but still staying with Marvel Studios, Marvel has reportedly chosen Star Trek Picard season 2 and 3 executive producer and showrunner Terry Matalas to be the new showrunner for the new Untitled Vision series set to premiere on Disney Plus in 2026. Paul Bettany is expected to reprise his role as Vision and will tell a new story set after the events of WandaVision. This is another show that I have no idea why we are doing.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It doesn't feel like it needs to happen. There was nothing about the Vision character that honestly needed to be expanded upon after WandaVision. What I feel what's great about WandaVision is that the character of the Vision still stayed kind of dead in a way. It was all all fixated off of Wanda's mind and her journey that she was experiencing through grief after the events of Endgame, and it makes that show what it is because of that. And now they introduce this new character, what a lot of people are calling White Vision, and now we are kind of supposedly going to move forward with him. I don't know if that's really needed, honestly. Like I was listening to another podcast and they were saying that Marvel might be better off just moving on with their newer characters and trying to salvage on the ones that they've been using for the last couple of years, because there's so much from the MCU that we haven't seen yet, and yet we're getting characters that we've seen an abundance of. And so, but then again, I say that, and they've had hit or misses with their latest, shows and movies that do expand on newer characters. But I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I just don't know. Even when it was originally announced, like, oh, they're going to do a Vision show. It's like, why?
Yeah.
It's like, well, there's a whole show, maybe intermingled in somebody else's show, and even then, it's like, what are we doing? But I don't think that there's enough to carry the whole series, unless they're going to use his series to backdoor pilot a bunch of other shit, which I also don't want to watch.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think between, because right now we're getting 2 spin-offs off of WandaVision. We're getting Agatha All Along and this Vision series, and I don't think we need either one of them. I'm ready to be proven wrong, but when I honestly heard about this restructure, I thought we were going to be getting less shows, and looks like we're still keeping the ones that were in development. I would give a pass on Agatha All Along because I'm sure that was further in development, and they probably filmed a lot of things, so you might as well put out what you already got and salvage something there to your new plan. But Vision, it doesn't sound like that you're still in the pre-production phase. You can easily scrap that project and move on to something else.
Let's make it better.
But again, I want to be proven wrong on this. So we'll see about that, but I'm holding my reserve on it. After much speculation, however, it was confirmed that when Giancarlo Esposito has officially joined the cast of Captain America: Brave New World, making his MCU debut, set to hit theaters February 14th, 2025. Though his role is being kept under wraps, sources say he might be playing the main villain in the film. I know a lot of photos recently has been out of him on set as Captain America: The Brave New World has been doing reshoots. So, I mean, I know you love him.
I'm a fan. I'm just waiting to see what character it is so I can go ahead and add another one of his signatures to my wall.
I mean, honestly, I remember he was kind of touting this a while back about how he was in the MCU. He's coming on board, but he was really he didn't say when he was coming on or what he was playing, and so now we know that he's going to be coming very soon in Captain America. And it just comes down to what role he's playing, and I don't know. It makes it very mysterious, very, very him. Honestly,
I'm here for it. I'm here for every second of it. So,
and then last piece of Marvel news, though still in the very early stages of development, Marvel may have found its writer for the untitled and unannounced live-action X-Men movie, with Hunger Games: Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes screenwriter Michael Leslie in negotiations to write the script.
Let's do it.
I know you. I think you enjoyed. Actually, no. I know you enjoyed the Hunger Games. Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes more than I did. But it's interesting to see that they're pulling him. They liked what he did with that movie, and potentially bringing into an X-Men series. So I wonder what he has in store, or what maybe Marvel liked from him to kind of give us, because that's a lot of weight to have. Like, hey, buddy, you are now in control of the live-action X-Men movie from the MCU that has a lot of weight to it. So, what do you do with that? And it did, the prequel movie for Hunger Games did really well. So, there's a lot of pressure into this new X-Men movie for sure.
I have hopes. I mean, as you mentioned, I did love that movie, and I think it's just his ability to handle an ensemble of characters and still treat them, give them their due and treat them individually. I think that he handled that well in that movie, and at least that's my take. That's what I hope that he can bring to X-Men. Like, you have all these great characters, and they all kind of need their moment to why they're so important to the team and what they mean to be X-Men. So I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, it's interesting that, like, a little bit of news, like, we all expected it, but like Marvel has not made any announcement that they're working on a live action X-Men movie just yet.
A lot of speculation.
And so a lot of speculation for sure, but I feel, this is my guess, D23 is coming. Well, actually, before that, we have Comic-Con coming in July, and we have D23 in August. I would like to think that either one of those events, Marvel at their presentation will make a big announcement that an X-Men movie is in the works. So, but again, time will tell on that. But yeah, that's all the Marvel news we have.
All right, moving on. We got some Godzilla news. Adam Wingard, the Godzilla vs. Kong and Godzilla X Kong New Empire director, will not return to direct the next MonsterVerse film. Sources say the parting of ways is described as amicable and stemming from timing issues. Wingard had signed a deal with A24 to direct an action thriller titled Onslaught, set to start filming this fall, and those plans did not line up with Legendary's plan to move forward with the next MonsterVerse film. The door remains open for a future return. Dave Callahan, screenwriter behind The Expendables, Zombieland Double Tap, Wonder Woman 1984, Mortal Kombat, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, has been hired to write the script for the next MonsterVerse film. Sure, yeah, this is fine. We'll see. We'll see what comes up the next one. Maybe we'll get it'll. At least literally the whole vibe of the film will be different. So,
yeah, I think you actually described it very well. Is that Adam Wingard, between the two Godzilla versus Kong movies, had definitely had this vibe and aesthetic to it that now I feel like it's going to be lost. And with this next movie coming out, we'll see what new director they decide to pull into it, and then from there, if you decide to keep that same wacky style that both of those movies kind of gave us. And I'm also curious of, like, also good for Adam Wingard to be like, hey, I have this I've been working with monsters for the last probably couple of years, and instead of wanting to do another one, he's like, I want to work on something on my own with A24. And I'm sure doing these big budget movies, like, it's nice to go down on a smaller scale and maybe do something other than the big monsters. And but it's also interesting that Legendary probably couldn't wait long enough for him to make that movie and then to move forward with this one. So it's kind of just a product of Hollywood, studios wanting something and not waiting for their creators to kind of move forward with it. So you make a choice and you move on with it. So
true. Yep. All right. Steven Spielberg has finalized the deal with Universal Pictures to direct his next feature-length film, set to hit theaters May 15, 2026. There has been no official announcement on what the film is about, but Variety reports it's going to be an original idea centered around a UFO. David Koepp, the frequent collaborator with Spielberg in such films such as Jurassic Park, War of the Worlds, and Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, will write the screenplay.
We had talked about this very briefly a few weeks ago, but now it seems to be confirmed that he is working on a new movie. David Koepp is the writer, and we already got a summer 2026 release on it. So, I'm 100% down for an original story from Steven Spielberg centered around a UFO. It's been a while, and I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, of like, this man has been working on like The Post and Lincoln and War Horse and all of these political dramas of historical stuff around it. And it was like, and then also recently he did Ready Player One, which I really enjoyed. And then he did West Side Story, which I did not enjoy at all. But then also he did The Fabelmans, which was like, his kind of biopic in a way of his childhood and his love for cinema. So I like the idea of Spielberg still making movies, and I like the idea of him giving us an original idea rather than kind of doing an adaptation, which I feel like he bounces between from time to time.
Yeah, probably wants to start another franchise.
Why not at this point? Now to some, honestly, this has been sweeping the. I mean, look at that. This film has been sweeping the news circuit for quite some time this past week. But Netflix has officially announced that the next installment in the Knives Out franchise will be titled "Wake Up, Dead Man," a Knives Out mystery. I added the emphasis on that. I don't know how they wanted me to pronounce it. Rian Johnson will once again return to write and direct the film, along with Daniel Craig returning as Detective Beyond Block. Joining the rest of the cast so far is Jeremy Renner from The Avengers, Kerry Washington from Scandal, Glenn Close from Fatal Attraction, Mila Kunis from Black Swan, Andrew Scott from Sherlock, Josh O'Connor, we just saw him in The Challengers, but he's also known for The Crown. Kaylee Spaney, we just saw her in Civil War. Daryl McCormick, who's from Peaky Blinders, and just announced today at the time of this recording, Thanos himself, Josh Brolin. While plot details on the third Knives Out film are being kept under wraps, production is expected sometime this month. Wake Up, Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery will premiere on Netflix in 2025.
I think that's great. I think they've got another great cast. Just kind of keep the same. I'm curious what this one, what the different vibe is going to be, because even between the first and the second one, there were some similarities, but the vibes were definitely different. So I'm curious to see what this is going to bring up.
Yeah, and this is obviously coming from the ongoing deal that Rian Johnson and Netflix made a couple of years ago, that he signed on for 2 Knives Out movies. So this is now the third one that he's producing. Or this is the second movie out of the 2 that he signed a deal with Netflix with. And what an interesting cast. It was also reported this is Jeremy Renner's first movie after the snowplow incident that he had a couple years back. So, and I know we're going to see him in The Mayor of Kingstown. That's about to premiere on Paramount Plus later this month. So it's good to see him back on his feet and going back into the movies. But I mean, also what a cast. Absolutely. I mean, you got some legendary actors in here and a lot of upcoming ones as well. You have a nice variety, especially like with Glenn Close and Kerry Washington, kind of giving us that legacy vibe. And then you have Jeremy Renner and Josh Brolin, obviously from the MCU. And then you have like Andrew Scott and then Josh O'Connor and Kaylee Spaney, who are like these up and coming stars. Well, maybe not Andrew Scott. He's been around for a while, but definitely with like Daryl McCormick and Josh O'Connor and Kaylee Spaney, like these are like some newcomers here, and they're having this avenue to shine as well. And this murder mystery that seems to be predicated on, like, you have your detective, who in this case is Daniel Craig, and then as mystery fashion, it has to be surrounded by an all-star cast. And so even now, as we're talking about this, I'm sure by tomorrow or the next day, there's going to be more people added to the list, because it feels like every day all last week we're getting, now this person's added, now this person's added. And it just kind of giving this movie some gravitas. And we did the same thing when Glass Onion came out. So yeah, another always good stuff. I know I think we had mixed reviews on Glass Onion. I remember liking it.
I more or less liked it, I think.
Yeah, it was fine. But Rian Johnson, I mean, good for him for coming out of The Last Jedi, which was either praised or scolded.
Depending on who you ask.
And then depending on who you ask, exactly. And then coming out of that is like, yeah, no, that's a thing that I did, but now I'm known for Knives Out. And that's good, because honestly, J.J. Abrams has yet to come out with a movie since Rise of Skywalker, and he's had a hard time getting out of that Star Wars bubble as well. So anyway, with that, in addition to the Knives Out 3 cast announcement, we have a few other casting updates to talk about. If you're watching us on YouTube, you see one Carla Esposito in this. We already talked about him. But on the other ones, we have Mahershala Ali in talks to join the new Jurassic World film, set to hit theaters July 2nd, 2025, directed by Garth Edwards.
Brooks, what?
Garth Edwards.
Or is that Gareth?
Ali will be...
I think it's Gareth.
Oh, you're right. I was completely wrong on all fronts. Gareth Edwards. Ollie will be joined by Scarlett Johansson, who is also in talks to lead, Rupert Friend from Homeland, and Jonathan Bailey from Bridgerton. This is interesting news, given that we've known that Blade has been giving a lot of problems recently, and it doesn't seem like that movie's getting set off the ground anytime soon. So, and I don't even think they started filming on Blade yet. So the fact that the Jurassic World movie is set to premiere, or it's set to hit theaters next July, it looks like that Ali has some time to kill to maybe do a movie in between eventually doing Blade.
Yeah, doesn't seem great.
No, it doesn't. But also, what an interesting move to make is like, well, if Blade's not working out, I already won 2 Oscars, so why not fight some dinosaurs with the Black Widow?
Why not?
Why not? Was also, again, I remember this was reported a while ago that Scarlett Johansson may be joining the cast as well, but no confirmation on any one of these. I think with the exception of Rupert Friend. So we'll see if Scarlett Johansson or Mahershala Ali end up diving onto this movie. But if they do, now that's an interesting cast going into this new Jurassic World film. Let's see what else we got. Chris Hemsworth is in talks to star as the lead in the upcoming Transformers G.I. Joe crossover film from Paramount and Hasbro. That's a fun casting decision.
What about Anthony Ramos?
I'm sure he's there too. But I can honestly, what's interesting is that Chris Hemsworth already has a relationship with the Transformers, because he's going to be voicing Optimus Prime in the upcoming Transformers 1 animated movie that's set to premiere in theaters this September. So I don't know if that has any correlation to what's going on with this live action movie. But if it doesn't, and Paramount just likes Chris Hemsworth to keep doing movies for them, I would love to see him as like the main G.I. Joe that kind of maybe trains Anthony Ramos into the world of G.I. Joe, and then obviously somehow crossing over with the Transformers. I kind of like that idea. I think he can be a fun role for this. But where's your thoughts on Chris Hemsworth joining the franchise?
I mean, he's to me, I look at him like Chris Pratt. Like they're just starting to put him in everything. So it's just, it's like, it's fine. But what I would love for that to have gone to maybe an unknown actor. Like, this is an up and coming franchise. You're in a prime spot where you can get somebody who's up and coming. That spot, that star spot that Chris Hemsworth. But whatever, I'm not gonna hate it. I like Chris Hemsworth as an actor, so I'm sure it'll be good.
I'm sure, or not. We don't know yet. But the idea of this crossover is still intriguing, and it excites me nonetheless.
Oh, it's gonna be fun.
And the last bit of casting news: Bill Skarsgård will officially reprise his role as Pennywise in the upcoming prequel series Welcome to Derry, or Dari, yeah, streaming on Max in 2025. I know there were a lot of rumors out there that he might not return, or if Pennywise was even going to be involved at all, and now it looks like all that's been confirmed. So I feel like we've been talking about that series for so long
it's
now.
like, it just needs to happen already.
Yeah, it's like, now you're not saying until 2025. I was like, God, all right, well, I guess we'll wait some more. But yeah,
all right. So Steve Carell is set to star in 2 upcoming comedy series. The first is from Tina Fey, titled The 4 Seasons from Netflix. Tina Fey will star alongside Carell, in addition to serving as co-creator with Lang Fisher from Never Have I Ever and Tracy Wakefield, Great News, and the 2020 Saved by the Bell. The series has been given an 8-episode order and is based on the 1981 film of the same name that follows 3 married couples who take vacations together each season, but things are thrown for a loop when one of the husbands leaves his wife and begins bringing a younger woman with him. The second series is from Ted Lasso, Shrinking and Scrubs show creator Bill Lawrence, and has been given a straight-to-series 10-episode order at HBO. The official logline states that the show is set on a college campus, centering on an author's complicated relationship with his daughter. Yeah, I'm here for it. I love me some Steve Carell. So, I mean, like we said, I mean, it can go either way, like with Space Force. But I have a better faith in these creators. But same could have been said about Space Force, because that was from the guy who made The Office.
Yeah, Daniel Craig, I believe, or
Craig
Daniels. Sorry, yeah. And so that also showed a lot of promise. But Tina Fey has more hits than misses on her show creating front. So especially, I mean, they did great together in Date Night, where Steve Carell and Tina Fey kind of starred together. So I think their comedic chemistry can work very well, and then maybe see Steve Carell back in a comedy setting. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. And it seemed like the premise is pretty basic. It's like, oh, here's these couples that vacation together, and then one person brings a other woman based off of, you know, a divorce or leaving his wife or whatever. So like, the premise doesn't really intrigue me, but obviously the creators behind it definitely does. And then obviously with Bill Lawrence, I mean, especially with Ted Lasso and Shrinking, those are 2 hits in our books. So him signing a deal with HBO and then giving us this, which honestly sounds still very similar to Space Force when you think about it. Instead of you know, him during in Space Force having a complicated relationship with his daughter, it's him in a college campus having a complicated relationship with his daughter. But I think this one might have a little bit more heart than maybe Space Force ever did. Honestly, Bill, I'm in the bag for Bill Lawrence to give us more shows like Ted Lasso and Shrinking. So
absolutely,
hopefully he can do the same with this one with Steve Carell on the helm.
Sure.
Moving on from that, a 300 TV series adaptations in the early development at Warner Brothers Television. Exact plot details are still being worked out, but sources say that the show would serve as a prequel to the 2006 film. Deals are still being negotiated, but Zack Snyder, who directed and co-wrote 300, is in talks to direct and executive produce the series. No writer or streaming service is currently attached to the project, which is weird because if it's from Warner Brothers Television, you would think it would just go on Max.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm just going to say this out. Just going to say this now. I don't think we need this.
No. Not at all. But I mean, 300 is one of my favorite movies. So
it's a great movie. But that also produced a okay sequel. If I'm not mistaken, might have also been a prequel. I don't remember if 300 the sequel to 300 was actually a prequel. I don't remember. But if it was, then that even proves this point even more, that this show was not necessary if you already made a prequel on it. But I also don't think we need to rehash a movie. A movie can just be a movie, and that's okay.
Yeah, and that can just be the thing that lives. It doesn't need anything else.
I don't think we need this at all. Just the idea that, you know, like, this is IP driven.
Yep. This is exactly what it
market.
is.
But yeah, again, you know, I'll look at a trailer. I'm not in the bag for this though. not one of the slightest. And lastly, Comcast has officially launched its 3-way streaming bundle called Stream Saver, offering Peacock, Netflix with ads, and Apple TV Plus exclusively to all Comcast broadband TV and mobile customers for just $15 per month. That sounds like a deal when you say it out loud. Like $15 a month, you get 3 streaming services. That's a 30% savings, or nearly $100 a year, compared to if you purchase those streaming services separately. Comcast CEO Brian Roberts said, "Those 3 products come at a vastly reduced price to anything in the market today and will be available to all our customers. This launch comes just weeks after Disney and Warner Brothers Discovery announced their 3-way streaming bundle that includes Disney Plus, Hulu, and Max that will be available starting this summer in the US." I was very curious about this, and I did the math, and yeah, it's when you say it out loud, it's like, oh, you have all these 3 streaming services at once, but Apple TV Plus costs $10 a month. Peacock with ads, or just Peacock in general, costs, I think actually Peacock with ads, costs about $6 a month. And then you have Netflix, the ad tier, costs $7 a month. So that rounds out to about $23 or so, maybe $24 when tax included. So when you say that it's $15 a month, yes, it's reduced, but in hindsight, it's not that reduced. Yeah. Like they said, it roughly about 30%. So, but what's interesting about this is that Comcast is like, hey, come to Comcast and either get our cable or mobile or whatever, pay more money, to then get a discount on a streaming service. And when you outweigh what you're spending in addition to get the deal, you might as well just pay for these streaming services separately. Because like I said, separately you're spending $23, $24, just round up $25 a month on those 3 streaming services individually. But your Comcast subscription is going to be much higher than that. And it's not going to be worth you saving 30% on these streaming services.
That's what they don't tell you.
Yeah. So honestly, the only benefit here is for people who are already subscribed to Comcast.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of like piggyback on what you already have. I don't feel like this is going to be any benefit for people to join Comcast in order to get this deal.
Agreed. I agree 100%.
But what I do find interesting is that it was the streaming wars. We're all doing streaming bundles now.
It's the bundle wars.
The bundle wars. It's just interesting to see how different companies are trying to find a way to bundle all these streaming services together and try to get your dollar for it. It's a move for sure. But anyway, it was lengthy, but that was all the entertainment news we have for you guys this week. As always, you can go to our social media channels on Instagram at boxoffice_bingers and our threads and Facebook page at Box Office Bingers. We're going to post all the news over there first, and then we're going to come back in the show and we'll talk about it. So with that, we're going to be diving into a fun segment we like to call Whatcha Watchin. So Ernesto, we'll start with you. What have you been watching?
I've only got a few things, but my main one is that just this weekend, Godzilla Minus One hit Netflix. We watched it, man, and the movie is still just as good. My only caveat is that nobody else wanted to watch it in subs. Everybody wanted to watch it dubbed, and watching it dubbed really does change your experience, because I think somebody said, "Wow, they seem like very over the top." And I said, and I heard it. I could hear it in the dubbing, but I go, that's just like our interpretation. But when you're listening to subtitles, I feel like it does not translate the same way. And it really hit me then because I've now seen the movie both ways, and I felt slightly more disconnected watching the subbed version than I did. The dubbed version than I did the subbed version. Like the subbed version, I felt like I was more invested into the story than I was the dubbed. Like it is still a fun movie, and I had a great experience. The movie is still amazing. Just the fact that you get this human story wrapped around this epic monster story, and the fact that they're able to make it entertaining and not like, Godzilla X Kong style. Like it is still a fantastic film, but if you're going to watch it, I highly recommend watching the subtitle version. Watch it with the voices as they were intended to be heard. Like from there, it just changes the feel of the movie when you're watching it in dub. Still a great movie. Yeah. Still an enjoyable watch.
It's crazy how this blew up the internet. Yeah. When all of a sudden, like I just logged on to Facebook and I just see Netflix is like, hey, Godzilla Minus One is on Netflix now. Enjoy it. And everyone was like,
what?
What? There was no announcement. It was just dropped it. And then it was also at the time where like all the video on demand services like Apple and Vudu were all like, yeah, you can now rent it and buy it as well. And so it was like this big push where like not only could you go and rent the movie because it wasn't on those, you couldn't find it at home until like June 1st. It was like not only is it available for you to rent and buy, it's also available on a streaming service and it's on Netflix. And I think it was an interesting marketing tactic to be like, it's just everywhere all at once. And I'm sure this movie got a huge uptick.
Yeah.
And also Netflix is a great platform for a lot of eyes to see this movie. As Netflix states a bunch of times that they have the most subscribers, and love them, hate them, whatever you want, that statement still holds true.
When they pull good ones like this, that's what happens.
Yeah. And Yeah, but it's one of my favorite movies from last year, and so I'm glad that now a lot of people have the opportunity to see it. I know. I think I also saw in an article that Netflix plans to release the Godzilla minus color version of the movie, so it'd be the black and white version. And so I think they plan on releasing that sometime in the next couple of months. And I think once they do that, I might watch it again and watch it in black and white, because I've always thought that was intriguing, but never wanted to go back to theaters and do it. But yeah, I think also if you go on video on demand, you can buy both versions, like color and minus color. Oh, okay. So I'm glad people are now having a chance to see it and kind of see what we were talking about months ago.
So I don't have much. I've got like 2 other things plus our Baby Reindeer conversation that we're going to get into here in a little bit. So we were scrolling TV and my daughter saw the Garfield movie, the one with Bill Murray. And she's like, oh, what's that? I was like, oh, let's pop it on. I was like, I wonder if this movie is just as bad as I remember. Guess what, Matt? It is. It is so bad. Garfield is a shitty cat. Fat, lazy, shitty cat. And he's terrible to everybody around him. And that's basically what this movie promotes. Until eventually, he goes through his story. But it is like almost unbearable. Like Bill Murray, like you can just tell, like it just felt like he was phoning it in. And like he's the only animated cat. And then there's other cats who are talking, but they're live action. Like all the other animals are live action except for Garfield. And then there's like one dog, and then I think I don't even remember. Odie, the dog that's with him, and like doesn't talk. Everybody else talks, but except for Odie, he's a mute. He's a mute dog. He doesn't talk.
I think he never talks though.
Maybe
like even in the cartoons, like he never talked. So
maybe that's why.
I guess they try to keep that alive. I don't know. Like I'm also pretty sure in the new animated movie that's in theaters now, he doesn't talk there either. Where all the other animated cats and animals do.
So, just brought it up to say, still a shitty movie. Don't waste your time. And so,
So before you go into the next one, do you have any urge to watch the new one now?
Maybe, but who is it? Is that an Illumination project?
That is Sony, so it will eventually hit Netflix.
Yeah, I'll wait. I'll just wait
because they have a deal with Netflix.
At this point, I'll just wait till it hit Netflix. But don't watch this one.
So once a month, I kind of I have a log of movies that I watch and want to watch, and so at the beginning of every month, I go back and watch the trailers for movies that came out in the previous month to see if I want to add to the list or not. And so the Garfield one came up on the list as well. And I saw the trailer, like officially, like in the full length. I don't think I've ever did before. And when I finished watching it, I was like, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good on that.
I don't think I have no desire to watch that movie whatsoever. But yeah, it doesn't look like they have a great track record with the Garfield movies. But unfortunately or fortunately, it's a kids movie and people are watching it and it's killing it at the box office.
It was number one again this week, wasn't it?
Well, Furiosa was number one in its first week, and then Garfield was like right behind it. And then in its second week for both movies, Garfield won without any competition. Like like Furiosa went to number 3, surprisingly, in the box office, which was shocking to me.
And then If went up to number 2. It was very interesting weekend. But yes, a weekend center around with good family movies for kids. Like those, we're in the summer season, so those are the movies that are going to dominate. Yeah,
and as the summer continues, Inside Out 2 is like the prime family movie from Pixar. So I feel like that's going to be primed to be something of a big box office reception. That's my guess anyway.
I agree as well. And then we also started, we just finished the half season of Bridgerton, the new season. But I guess my wife realized that we never watched Queen Charlotte, the Bridgerton Story, which came out in the previous year. I'm like 2 episodes in. I'm just, it's getting an honorable mention. It's fine. It's a good show. She likes it, so I watch it.
Sure. I'm almost okay that Megan doesn't want to continue this series. Because again, I really enjoyed the first one, and like we spoke about last week, there was no world where I felt that this after the first season it was going to get any better than that.
Yeah. The one thing that keeps drawing me, the one thing that I really enjoy about it is their use of current music and turning it, putting a classical spin on it. Like to me, that's what I watch for. That's the most interesting thing about, and it does carry over into the Queen Charlotte show as well. So it's fine. I mean, I get to enjoy the music. Like, I think it's good. I was like, they did a rendition of Halo, and I was like, wow, this is so good. Like, why is this is so enjoyable? It's just really, I feel like an old man. Like, why is this classical music hitting so hard?
I can see it.
Yeah, but with the string, it's like that part hitting.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god! Like I just want to listen to the song now.
Yeah. So what you're telling me is that I just need to listen to the soundtrack and I'll have to really watch it.
You would 100% appreciate the soundtrack.
Yeah, I can. I mean, I already did for the first season.
Yeah, I know.
And I have a couple of scores from like on my playlist from the first season of Bridgerton. So I have no doubt that I probably would enjoy the previous seasons there too. But as far as the story is concerned, like I said, I don't see myself thinking that it's going to get any better than season one. And I'm glad Megan was like, yeah, we can watch it whenever. It's like, whenever you want. No rush.
You just tell me.
You tell me. No rush over here.
But that's all I got, I guess. And now we can finally have this conversation. Last week, when Brian, for our Furiosa review, if you haven't checked that out, please go check that out. We briefly mentioned that you had finished Baby Reindeer, but we didn't want to ruin it for Brian since he didn't get a chance to watch it. So now you said you wanted to wait and have this conversation.
Yes.
So, sir, I am ready. I finished it a couple weeks ago. I thought it was incredible. I think the way that it shows like loneliness and depression and just how people long for each other and how sometimes people who don't need to be connected to each other seem to find a way to find each other. What were your thoughts?
I was actually, you recommended this and I saw the series was getting a lot of buzz. And I was quite surprised on what we kind of turned out of it because honestly, I didn't really know what to expect. When the show starts, it's kind of straightforward. It's like, here's this stalker. And obviously what you would do is go to the police and eventually put a restraining order on this person, and any sane person technically would do that. But there are so many layers to this story that it just keeps drawing you in. And it was like both fronts on like, why do you keep entertaining the idea of someone stalking you, pretty much? And then why is she stalking him? And so you're getting both sides of like intrigue here. And I thought that it was told beautifully, yet tragically halfway through the series. When you see him after, because I think the series starts with him going to the police and it was like, why did you take so long to report this? And then episode 1, 2, and 3 kind of gives us everything that happened before he went to the police. And then episode 4 kicks back again, going back to the same question of what took you so long. And then it goes back to another flashback before the events of, when she started stalking him. And then we get this devastating story, like this horrendous story of him wanting to get a break and him trying to make it in the comedic scene. And then essentially trusting into this producer that's promising him like you're going to be famous, you're going to be in the writer's room, you're going to basically get what you want as a comedian and as a writer. And then all of a sudden it wasn't turning into anything that at all, and it was just this producer kind of taking advantage of him and then basically raping him every night, forcing him to take all these hard drugs, and then kind of altering his life to the point where his girlfriend leaves him, and then awkwardly having to live with her mom as they're separated. And then it slowly goes into the events leading into when him working at the bar and him trying to get his comedic stuff going, and then her walking into the bar and recapping all that stuff again. And you're like, wow, I get it now. why you didn't report this to the police earlier, and why you are the feelings that you are feeling, and why you are entertaining this idea of her stalking you and you wanting this sort of attention and this praise. Like, it all makes sense at that moment. I feel like that was the turning point for me of watching the show with intrigue and then watching the show with like now an official purpose of like, I hear you. And this isn't a black and white story. This is complicated, and you trying to figure out where you are in the world is not as easy as it is. And to me, it was just a very powerful way of displaying that, and then going into the last 3 episodes following that and seeing how all this is more or less resolved, and then know that this was a true story. And he's playing himself, an exaggerated version of himself. The writer, the creator, is also the actor, and you see that, him putting his life's work, literally his journey and his mental process into a show like this, and kind of putting it all out there. Is also just a brave thing to do. It was very powerful, very powerful.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it was a lot to take in. And you said you also... Now, how did you feel? I recommended it a few times, but how did you feel going in to the Piers Morgan interview afterwards? Because Piers Morgan does this hour-long interview with the real Martha, and kind of goes over some of the points from the show. And I feel like, at least mine, I felt like she answered a lot, but also said nothing.
She said nothing.
It's like a lot of circular. There's a lot of like circular things,
There was a lot of denying of what she didn't do, and I think that, to me, is very telling to the character in the show and what the real life person is, and the fact that you can link a lot of parallels between how she reacted during the interview and how the character was portrayed on the show. And in my opinion, you can see that it wasn't that far off. Because she was deny. I did none of those. It's like, oh, I might have sent a few and all that stuff. And like you see the dialogue and the verbiage that she's using, and not really answering any of his questions, and not really saying anything about herself either. And so, yeah, I feel like it was very telling to her as a person. And, I think she said she wanted to sue Netflix for a lot of things that claims that it was just not true, that happened in real life, and putting her in a bad light. And when you actually watch the show, I don't think they put her in a bad light at all, really. I think you were just kind of seeing the events that happened and what she was doing and how he was responding to it.
I mean, with the whole going to jail thing, there's some stuff that obviously puts her in a bad light, but it's just funny how he just kept harping on. He's like, there are a lot of things, like, why aren't you suing them yet? Like, if this is true, like, that's defamation. Like, it's very clear cut. Yeah. And if you did do these things, like, there's like one point he's like almost dumbing it down for her. He's like, do you know how the internet works? Do you know what an IP address is? Like, do you understand that these things can be easily tracked? All these things, like things that happen in the show, can be easily proven with fact checking. And she's like, yeah, it'll come out in Discovery. So, I mean, it'll be interesting. It just, because at first, like, there was like straight denial, and then there were certain parts where she conceded on a few things, where she's like, well, I didn't send any emails. Well, maybe I only sent like 5 or 6. He's like, well, what about this? And then he pulls out like proof, like, you said this on this date and you said this on this date, so are you sure it's only this small number and not this massive number as it's been reported? And for Netflix to have the balls to even say on there it's a captivating true story, knowing that they could be sued for defamation, like, that says a lot. So that shows that somebody's got some proof somewhere.
Yeah, and also, I mean, that like he said in the interview, like, I'm sure that there's a lot of paperwork that proves that a lot of the stuff actually happened. So, and Netflix would not have signed on to that and putting a true story claiming on that if it wasn't at least 90% true of what was happening in that show.
Agreed.
But I do find it fascinating that, like, you even saw toward the end of the series of him fixating over her, even though it was already done.
Yeah.
Like, she was already sentenced to jail, but yet he couldn't let her go. And I think we see that with Baby Reindeer. Like, I think in a way this was his way of maybe finally letting it go.
Yes.
Like, it's now all out here. If he was trying to be a comedian and was doing a failing job at that, then he was found some promise in a writer and was able to collect all this information that he did and then put it in a script and then have to pitch that idea for Netflix to pick it up and then go ahead and star in the damn thing and write a lot of this as well. And like, after all of this, trauma that he's been through building up in his life, he was able to compile this in this 7-episode arc and was like, maybe now he is free from maybe the torture that he's been put himself through all these years, given all the stuff that has passed. So it's a show that it's unique. It's very different from what's out there today. It feels real. It feels raw.
Yeah, especially to our society. It's like, oh, there's so many mentally unwell people who are just out walking the earth.
Yes.
That can get caught up in shit like this.
Or and even in his case, he roped himself up into this. Like, he obsessed over this her as much as she obsessed over him, but in a different context because he was aware of it, and the show was letting us know that he was aware of it, and like, it was affecting him mentally. And there was only, I guess, this was the way he was able to bring this out. So again, I don't know if it qualifies for this year's Emmys. But if it doesn't, then I really hope that by next year this will get some recognition.
I agree.
In the award circuit.
I agree 100%.
Anything else with us before we move on? Okay. So with that, I watched a few movies. I did end up catching the American Society of Magical Negroes that hit Peacock a few weeks ago. This was a movie that we were going to review a few weeks back before we had made some changes to our to what we were going to review for the week. And I'm here to say that I'm happy we changed our mind.
Was it that bad?
It wasn't to say that it was that bad.
It wasn't good.
But it just was. I feel like, and here's a problem. You had an interesting premise around this movie. And I think that's what intrigued me to go watch this movie in the first place. The idea of this magical society of magical Negroes who were going around and calming down white people through magic so they don't, I guess, do anything to kill other black people is an interesting premise nonetheless. The problem with it was its tone, because that idea can be taken very seriously, and yet it was not, because you had this idea wrapped around a rom-com, because some parts were humor, and then it was also centered around this love story within this, and then all of a sudden it tries to be a little serious, and it's like, well, I'm sorry, you can't be both.
Yeah, you gotta pick your lane.
You gotta pick your lane, and like then honestly, when you try to be serious, you're falling flat on your rom-com. But then when you focus on the rom-com, you're falling flat on your seriousness. And then toward the end, and I feel like it ended very abruptly, and in my opinion, very poor taste. And do you have any inkling of watching this movie, Ernesto? Did you say no?
No, sorry, okay. I thought you heard me. I said no.
No, okay. So with that, I'll just kind of spoilers to the very ending of this movie. There is this female character in there, and also acts as the love interest. And toward the end, act as like maybe it's not really a post-credit scene. It's like the movie was over and then it cut to black, and then there was a scene right before the credits, and she had this brass knuckles that said "So Swag" on it. That was introduced in the beginning, toward middle of the movie. That was kind of a throwaway. And then you see her walking into a nail salon or a hair salon, whichever one, and she shows the "So Swag" brass knuckles, and then a door opens, and it was revealed that it was the Society of Supportive Girlfriends and Wives. Or no, sorry. It was the Society of Supportive Wives and Girlfriends. And I was like, okay. So you then now introduced this magical society of magical Negroes and supportive wives and girlfriends. They're wrapped into this movie about race. And I was like, none of this felt right at all at the end of the day. Interesting premise. I feel like they missed the mark 100% on that. It landed very flat for me.
I guess things worked out the way that it was supposed to then in that for us.
Yeah, that we ended up not watching it. Or not reviewing on it and like taking more time than it needed on it, I guess I should say.
Exactly.
So with that, we're going to move on. And I saw another movie called The Boys in the Boat. It was inspired by a true story about these group of basically Americans in the 1930s who went to the Olympics and their trials and adversities on that process to go to the 1930s Olympics, and they won the gold in the rowing competition. And it was directed by George Clooney, and I thought he directed a very solid sports drama, and that's essentially what it was. It was an underdog story. It was a sports movie. Ernesto knows me very well. That's my bread and butter. It's like, you give me underdog sports drama, I'm watching it every day. I like it. It's more like comfort food at this point. I feel like it could have been executed a little bit better. There were some moments where like there are like 8 members of the team, actually 9, and yet we only really followed 3. And so like this whole movie you're pitching like this collective unit, this family, but yet I couldn't even tell you the names of the other 5 people that were part of this family that you were preaching throughout this whole movie. And we really only focus on a select few on that. And granted, I know a lot of other sports movies do that as well, where there's a team, but at least they did a better job of like making sure everyone had their moment to shine, rather than really just focusing on like a couple of the players or of the athletes in there. But you still had those very inspirational moments. You still had like the nail biter, if will they, won't they win scenarios. Like I feel like he checked a lot of boxes, but at the end of the day, it lacked a little bit of the emotion that some of the other sports dramas have done better in the past. But overall, it was a pretty solid movie from George Clooney, and it just hit Prime. So if anyone's interested, I recommend watching it. It's like you kind of get what you sign up for with this one. So, and that's not necessarily not a bad thing. And the last movie that I watched was Atlas, just hit Netflix, starring Jennifer Lopez. And Ernesto, I want to talk about very briefly the Rotten Tomatoes score. And due to critics and audiences alike, they both favored this movie pretty negatively. The Rotten Tomatoes score was a 19% on this movie. The audience score was 48% on this movie. Not great. The movie was directed by Brad Payton, who did San Andreas and Rampage. So both movies by The Rock, and I actually enjoyed San Andreas, and I didn't really care for Rampage. And so then you have Jennifer Lopez, who has a hit or miss on movies throughout her career. And I am here to say that the 19% on Rotten Tomatoes for the critics and the 48% on the audience score is 100% wrong. And this was a great movie.
What?
Yes.
Well, that is not what I thought you were going to say, because I've seen so many negative reviews on this. All right, Matt, sell me.
Yes.
Sell me on this movie.
I was in the bag for this movie regardless, because it's a sci-fi, looks like fun. You also had Sterling K. Brown and Simu Lee in it. It's like, I know these people. Like, what can go wrong? Honestly, this movie hits hard for me. Like, they did a really good job in the opening act, kind of setting up the world where AI has taken over. It's a pretty generic plot. And I'm going to put it out there that the plot is pretty simple. There's not much to it. A lot of people complained about it, but it's like, okay, but this is like every other sci-fi movie. So, like, I'm not going to knock it down for basically doing the thing that's like, oh, AI took over the world. Like, yeah, the same as Terminator, but we're not bitching at that movie. So, like, sure, we're using that same premise again. but we're doing it in 2024, not in 1980s. So like just under a different skin. But like any other sci-fi movie is where AI takes over. So it's like, okay, I can give that a pass, but it's the way you handle it. It's what makes it the difference. And I thought they handled it pretty well. Like the first 5 minutes, we were right in there. Like, this is what happened. This is how the world turned to shit. All right, we have Jennifer Lopez. She's an analyst. She wants to get involved. Her acting was like 50-50 for me. There was like halfway through the movie where the first half I was like, I'm not buying it. I can see why people don't like her performance and then there. But once we kind of like, her character was very guarded and like very secretive, and like she had all these walls put up and she didn't trust anybody. And I feel like that reflected into her performance, where I feel like I got nothing out of her because as a character, we weren't supposed to. But then she forms this relationship with this AI that's in this kind of suit. So like they end up, without spoiling too much, like they're looking for the main AI that took over the world basically. And so they got a lead on where that was, and she has a problem that we're not familiar with AI for obvious reasons, and she wants nothing to do with the current tech, which is also a trope in sci-fi films. And then she is forced to, for survival purposes, forced into this kind of suit, not really suit, but like this machine that is also an AI and has to respond through this neural link that can make sure that ensures her survival of like being in sync with this robot and this suit and this like machine and her, so they can have the best chances of surviving out of this situation. And I think where the movie sells it for me is that relationship between the AI, that robot named Smith, and Jennifer Lopez's character. And you see the walls slowly breaking down in her as the movie goes on. And also the chemistry in that movie is just really, really good. The guy who plays Smith, his voice is so soothing. There was this like Discovery Channel Disney documentary that used to air from time to time. And they had this voice that he would narrate through this documentary as you go through the parks. I looked it up. It was not the same guy, but it sounded just like him. So for me, it was like, oh, this feels nice. This feels like comfort food with his voice as the AI. But then there was these comedic moments that you had between the characters, because you had the AI and Smith trying to learn Jennifer Lopez's character, and there was moments where he tries sarcasm and it's funny. And there was also a moment where they had to like do the Neuralink, and then he asked like these stupid questions. And one of the questions was like, do you like pie or cake? And she goes, what? Why would I answer? That's a stupid question. As like, who does like, and then she started listing like the definition of what a pie is. And so she goes, I know what a goddamn pie is. And then he goes, well, you know what a goddamn cake is? And started listing the cake, what a cake was. And for me, it was so genuine, like such a quick response. Yeah. It made me like audibly laugh out loud. I was like, that was pretty funny. And then I feel like once they were able to like connect and have that bond, her character was able to like loosen up a little bit, as well as, you know, the performance was lighter. It was better. It was more organic. And then that relationship was able to continue throughout the whole movie. And to me, that's what sells it. So, and then, you know, you get back to like the generic sci-fi stuff, you know, AI wants to take over the world, blah, blah, blah. And then there's Sterling K. Brown doing his own thing. And I feel like that both Simu Lee and Sterling K. Brown was not utilized to their fullest. This was 100% a Jennifer Lopez movie. So if you're already not liking her performance and liking her as an actress, then, you know, maybe you're already predetermined that you weren't going to like this. But for me, it really sold. The voice actor name was Gregory James Cohen, and he nailed it as the voice of the AI. And then also this movie looks stunning. The visual effects in this movie was really, really good. Like, I was glued in on the action set pieces that was in here. And I was fully invested into the story, mainly because of the connections that you have with these characters. So at the end of the day, at the 2-hour mark, I had a great time with this. Okay. Like, I feel like that we would have to, I feel like I want to start a new, like, and when we have our year-end wrap-ups, and we kind of go over like our best and our worst, I kind of want to now introduce a guilty pleasure because this for me, like, what was the guilty pleasure of 2024?
Okay.
And this was mine. This was my guilty pleasure because I saw nothing wrong with this movie, yet everyone else is telling you this movie was garbage. And I'm here to say take a chance on it because I really enjoyed it.
So I may give it. I'm probably gonna. For you, Matthew, I will try to watch this and I will report back.
All right.
Now I'm curious.
Yeah, it was fun. It was an interesting idea. Like I said, like the story isn't there. Like it's pretty basic. Like once you get past that and you get to see what else this movie has to offer, I think most people would enjoy it. But maybe not because they're really shitting on this movie. But but I enjoyed it. So if there was a guilty pleasure of this year so far, this is it for me. So there you go. That is all we've been watching. And now we're going to be diving into our spoiler review of the week, our foreign film of the month, Sisu, a Finnish film. Ernesto, your thoughts on the movie?
So I have to say, I really, really, really enjoyed this movie. I liked very similar to the sentiment you mentioned of Atlas, where the plot is very simple. I think the plot being simple and our main lead not being a man of very, very few words, if any, throughout the 90% of the film, it just worked because then now you're focusing on this. You're focused on what's happening on screen, not so much the dialogue. And I mean, he's in this open forest background, which the director, he said in interviews that's what he likes to do. He likes to shoot in the forest, and their use of natural light and everything that they put into using this, getting an actual tank on set, working with having to work with the horse, which watching the horse explode in the beginning of the movie was pretty horrific. It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
I thought the action sequences were obviously incredible. I thought they were extremely well executed. They were really exciting. I mean, it was very like gory action and almost like into this realm of unbelievability, but you're fine with it. It's like they took they went straight to John Wick 2. We're not there's not going to be anything grounded about this at all. They're going to blast him with all these guns, and he's going to get this Wonder Woman shield and back away into the water and be perfect and not be harmed at all. Or he's going to hook himself onto a plane and then manage to climb his way in and hold on with sheer force with just this rusty-ass 1940s pickaxe and hold on to the bottom of the plane. Oh, and then use that same pickaxe to breach the whole of the plane to climb inside. And that's not including the motorcycle ride he took to hook himself onto there.
Yes.
I mean, it was ridiculous, but I was here. There are so many good moments of taking out, and I think you don't feel bad for them at all because they're just stereotypical Nazis.
Yes.
And I think that is why this movie works so well because you don't need to know about the Germans and all and where they stood and all that. This is not about that. This is about a man, John Wick style, taking out Nazis, and it's just badass scene after one badass scene. I enjoyed it. I would have 100% watched this movie again.
Yeah, I think to your point, the mass appeal about this movie is that there isn't much to think about when it comes to the story. Mm-hmm. And so when you kind of drop that guard down of trying to understand every plot detail, when the movie offers you very little when it comes to the plot, and it's this guy, he's kind of like a prospector. He finds gold and he wants to take it to the city. But then the Nazis show up and come in his way. And then later you find out about a little bit more about this character, but it's not much. It's just oh yeah, you don't mess with this guy. That's basically what they said.
Yeah.
It's oh yeah, no, he's killed over 300 Russians. You don't mess with him. They know him. They call him, I forgot what the name they called him. But yeah, you just don't mess with this
immortal, guy. I think in English it was translated to immortal or something like that.
Yeah. And then after that, it literally those two moments is this man, he found gold. He wants to take it to the city. to put his goal on a bank and maybe start new life. We really don't know why he needed the gold moving forward into his future. He didn't say any words until the very end. And then like Nazis get in his way, and then he's like, well, these Nazis are in my way, they're kind of pissing me off, I'm just gonna kill them all until I get what I want. And then eventually is become like this vengeance train, because now it's like, okay, now these guys are really pissing me off, and they are not stopping when they should have just left them alone from the beginning.
Yes.
And then really at that point, you're just along for every ridiculous ride that comes from this, one after the next, and you're just like, it's a great like set piece. It's the next, each scene sets itself up for the next set, like the next scene, and it does it pretty well. And I think the chapters really worked for this movie.
I agree with you 100%. And it made you lock into the story linearly. Like we barely know anything about that guy, but I was totally invested in him taking out these Nazis.
Yes.
Like, I didn't need to learn about his backstory or anything like that. Oh, you don't like Nazis? They messed with you? Well, I guess it's time for them to die. One of my favorite. Yeah. I'm trying to think which was your favorite like kill scene set?
Honestly, I think I would have to go to the minefield, because it was something that I wasn't expecting, and that was like the start of like the batshit craziness that was coming out of this movie.
That's true.
And I also like the setup for it too, because chapter 1 was gold, and it was just all it was set up. Like, he's a man, he finds gold, he leaves. Chapter 2, Nazis. Nazis are bad. He walks by Nazis and they left him alone. The other Nazis were like, hey, you are walking by us, that's bad. And then they hear all this gunfire. He kills those Nazis in a very gruesome way. And literally the first shot of a dead Nazi is a knife through his skull.
Yeah.
And then he kind of just moves on from there. And then what we didn't know, what the other Nazis that let him go originally knew, but the audience didn't, is that they kept doing this close up on the horse and its hooves, and then all of a sudden it just went boom. And I wasn't expecting him to be in a minefield. But then, to this almost comedic fashion and kind of badassery, he used that minefield to his advantage, because the Nazis that were now chasing him had no idea where they had planted the bombs. And so you just see them, like, I wrote down that he literally threw a mine at them.
Yeah.
Like, he threw
in the face.
it in the face, and he exploded. And then he took two guys, like, hey, you and you, go walk over. And they both went to each side, and then just like, and you're like, well, all right, yeah, he's dead too. And he was able to use the minefield as cover. But then, to your point, also randomly has like this shield for cover, Wonder Woman style, to evade from the gunfire and all that stuff as well. So, to me, I thought that set the mood for the rest of the movie really well, and therefore was probably my favorite setup and scene throughout the movie.
Mine would have
what
to
about
be.
You?
Mine would have to be. My second is the mine scene for the exact same reason, but my first, I think the underwater scene where they're tracing him underwater and then they fall in the water, and it's just like this is the one time in the movie where we don't get that kill scene. It's all done through implication. Like, you get a little bit of him slicing his throat, but what you mainly see is the bubbles and then the blood flow to the top. And I think that, like, is this guy gonna breathe? Like, what is happening down there? Like, if people like this underwater creature is just taking people and killing them. It's like, what is this machine? What is this monster that we've encountered that he can just kill people underwater and not have to come up for air? And like, he's apparently has this whole thing like all planned out. And I think like that, it just showed to me, that scene showed a lot of his planning. And it really, to me, like, that really highlighted his skill set and the things that he was able to do. So that would probably be why that one was my favorite. And then he grabs the guy on his back and they shoot him with that gun on top of the tank.
Yeah. But also, like, even the scene leading before that, he was running away. So you had the gasoline bit.
Oh, that's
where
right.
he was like
That's
under the tank and he'd like stab the gasoline. and I think he was trying to evade the scent from the dogs away from him. But then I feel like that backfired a little bit because they smelled gas, and they were about to check probably underneath the tanks or the vehicles, like, where is the gas leak? And so then he makes a run for it, which honestly, even before that, when he like fell asleep behind that destroyed like vehicle, and like the first wave of Nazis kind of passed him, I was like, you're telling me you didn't see him like right there?
He's literally
he's
right
not
there.
Like he was he's literally right there. Anyway, so he does all this stuff, and then like he's literally running away, and they sick the dogs on him, and then he lights himself on fire.
Yeah, wild.
And then he jumps into the water, which, going off of everything you said about that scene, what was crazy that I believe that he was, when we saw his first kill where he cut the man's throat, and then he was sucking the air out of him, like he was sucking the air was coming out of his body, and was retrieving some air bubbles that way. And I was like, this is ridiculous, but I'm here for it.
That's fine.
And that's fine. Like, at this point, sure, why not? Taking air bubbles, fantastic.
That makes sense.
And like that makes sense. So like, you're telling me that every kill that we don't see is him getting more air from his victims? And then like you had the guy in the boat who was like, we will shoot you if you try to escape. But realistically, he was dead either way, because I'm sure he was threatening him from underwater to go to shore. And so there's that as well. And then also, always a movie with a dog. As like the Nazis were going to kill this dog or threaten to kill this dog.
They strapped a bomb to the dog. Fucking assholes.
Yes. Assholes. But then even like the next scene that followed after that, they hung him. And I guess he can fake being hung.
I guess he's got impeccable neck strength. Just hold it. Oh, don't want to die.
And then the part that he pretended to be dead.
Yeah.
So I guess he can stop breathing too, or like really calm himself to be almost not like dead. And then the part that made me cringe was that like in order for him not to like fully die from the hanging, he was able to lift himself up and prop himself on the wood from a nail sticking out of the fixture, the wood, and sticking it in an already punctured bullet wound. I was like, oh my God, this man's insane.
It's like, how incredibly painful.
And then he decides to give up. And then he sees that like a plane like came in and landed to maybe get fuel, and then he decides to not kill them. Actually, he killed one and then left the other guy alive. And then he decided to I think he gave up at that moment for whatever reason. He was like, fuck it, there's a plane, I'm just gonna go steal it and go for it. I thought he was literally just gonna crash that plane on their convoy. I thought that's where we were going.
Yeah.
But then we also had the side story of the ladies who got captured, and we kind of have their moments of being badasses, and like him inadvertently helping them out along the way. It's like, oh, you don't mess with him, and then she was just laughing. It's like, oh, you guys are fucked. You guys were already dead as soon as you walked by him. And then the movie continues its absurdity with like him somehow crashing the plane and blocking or at least giving them a warning, and then kind of going up and down the vehicles and killing people left and right. And then the ladies were able to get a chance to, like, he left one of the main guys left for dead, and then the woman's come out of nowhere and I guess shoot him. I don't really know what happened there. But to your point, I thought it was like equally as exhilarating as it was ridiculous when the plane was taking off and he's literally on the motorcycle with an axe. And just like, also, I thought it was cut really well, where like the plane takes off, you don't see him, and it was just like a,
yeah.
And then like, we don't really know, but you kind of know already. And like, he's literally hanging on to dear life on the bottom of the plane. And honestly, I didn't think about it until you said it. There was no way he would have opened the bottom, like create a hole in the bottom of that plane to get into the cockpit.
Oh, let's not forget that he couldn't do anything in the spot that he was at, so he had to let go and grabbed the back of the plane in midair. So he's like, fuck it, I'm going to go for it, and just let's go, and grabs the back of the plane. So, I got it. Now I'm going to axe my way in.
and then they go on a hand-to-hand combat at the in the plane, because that's how you end every boss fight.
Yeah, is
hand-to-hand combat. And then when you think the bad guy is gonna win, and he gets this clip and he's beating the hell out of him. He clips him to the bomb, presses the button, and he just goes flying down.
Yeah, that was pretty
great. The villain does, and he literally yells "fuck you" in the air
like,
as
you're
he's
dying.
going to his death. But honestly, that's an appropriate response. It's like, you went through all this trouble, you stole the man's gold, you're trying to be a Nazi, and then like you got this far, and he's just like, "This fuck you, dude, fuck you for
fuck
I'm just
you.
trying to do." and then I'm sorry, the biggest bullshit out of everything we saw. And we saw a lot of ridiculous shit. But when that plane crashed,
and he lived,
there is he without a scratch.
Yeah.
I was like, no way does he survive that. No way. I wanted him to lose at least a limb.
Yeah.
Getting out of there. At least had him walk out with with one arm or something. There's no way he survived that plane crash at all. That to me, that's the one thing I couldn't let go in the movie. Like everything else I was able to believe, but not that plane crash. That it was quite ridiculous. He is immortal. I guess so.
Yeah, it was a good movie.
And then he was able to just, he got the dog back, which is great. He went back for the dog. They went to the bank. And then he says the simple words, "Bills, big one, please. Won't be so damn heavy to carry." Won't be so damn heavy to carry. That's all he says.
And then it ends.
And then it's like, Sisu. And I was like, yeah, that's all this movie needed to be.
Yep.
It was it was also said to be influenced by spaghetti westerns, which you can 100% see that throughout this movie. You have like this Lone Ranger just doing random badass shit, helping out the people in need during this adventure. Making sure no dogs were harmed in his excursion. Yeah. And his vengefulness.
The director did say in some interviews that he was heavily influenced by Rambo. So, and I could totally see that. I mean, of course, with that big ass fucking knife that he was walking around with.
But yeah, this was just a wild ride.
Yeah, it was a fun movie.
Yeah, it's kind of like you kind of get what you pay for. You know what you're signing yourself up for with this movie. With all of that, Ernesto, your final thoughts?
I thought it was a great fun movie. I'm totally on board for the second one. It's something that you can kind of rewatch. Like it doesn't require a whole lot of mental energy to really enjoy, which I also really liked. Because sometimes you just want to turn your brain off and watch Nazis get fucked up, and I'm okay with that.
And that's pretty much what this was. Yeah. This is a turn your brain off movie that you see Nazis get fucked up.
Yeah.
And like, you can't help but to. Also, I like this new age of action flicks. It's like it's this raw, gritty, like one man taking it down no matter what. And then when you put Nazis in front of it, you're like, even better.
Even better. Should have led with that.
Even better. Should have led with that.
But I'll give it I'm gonna give it a 4.5. I'm gonna give it 4.5. It's a solid flick. Solid action movie.
It's also, I know, I agree with you. 4.5. It's a movie that knows what it is and knows what it wants to be.
It doesn't try to be anything else.
It doesn't try to be anything else, and I feel like that's important. Like, because we can watch a bunch of movies, right? And it's a wide spectrum of genres of comedies and actions and dramas and sci-fis and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, if there's a clear vision of what this movie is trying to be, and it succeeds in doing that, then this movie will be a success of what it's trying to be. And this movie was doing nothing else of being what it was supposed to be. A turn your brain off, energetic, action-packed movie that just sees a one-man guy who's apparently immortal, doing ridiculous things, killing Nazis. And that's what this needed to be. But yeah, I finally got a chance to watch this movie. I know it's been on the radar for a while. I'm glad we were able to finally get back into our foreign film of the month. And this was a nice one to have a nice return to after a couple of months of not doing these.
Agreed.
But yeah, as of this moment, you can watch this movie on Stars, and it's also available on video on demand if you don't have Stars. But yeah, that's our spoiler review on Sisu. I can't wait for the sequel.
Yeah, same.
And for that's all the show we have for you guys this week. It was a jam-packed one, and we fit it all in there. Yeah, Ernesto's our lovely little listen. Nope, let's try that again. Ernesto, tell our lovely listeners what they can look forward to next week.
Next week, we were just talking about it earlier. Inside Out 2, we will be reviewing, and we're going to have a special guest, Elizabeth Jordan, will be rejoining the show. And I think the plan is to also talk about Percy Jackson as well. If I can get a chance to watch the series, she's a huge fan. Last time she was on, she was raving about it. Or just that she was excited for it to come out, and she's mentioned to me offhand like some of the things about it. So I'm really excited to kind of dive in. It's something I've been looking forward to, and I think now is the perfect time. Now that I'm going to have someone who clearly has the knowledge of the book series, this is a perfect time to dive into it.
Yes, absolutely. And also, Inside Out 2 is probably going to be one of the biggest animated movies of the year. Yeah. I could be saying that out of turn, but given the rest of the 2024 landscape, especially in the animated movies front, maybe Moana 2 has some legs, but I think this movie kind of beats it as far as like this movie has been highly anticipated for quite some time now. And I think the first movie came out in 2015, 2014. Just double check real quick. 2015. So 9 years ago was the first movie. And so a lot of hype has been around it. This movie is an Oscar winner, I'm pretty sure. And like this movie has changed lives and has inspired, Oscar winner. The first movie did. And I'm really excited to see what Pixar does with a sequel to this. Because I thoroughly enjoyed the first movie a lot. Oh, yeah. And this was like Pixar in its prime. And so given it's, Pixar's last couple of movies, and last year they had a really successful one, in my opinion, with Elemental. So I like to see them continue that trend and put it into Inside Out 2. A lot of high hopes for this one.
Yeah, I do. I have high expectations, so we'll see.
I want to. Kelsey Main is directing it, and she has been part of the Pixar family, but this is going to be her directorial debut. Okay. So, we'll have to see if she can. That's a big for her to be. This is her directorial debut. A lot of faith under Pixar to give her this franchise. So I have a lot of high hopes. For it. So I hope it delivers when we review it next week. If you want more from us, you can always follow us on our social media channels on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok at Box Office Bingers, our X and Letterboxd page at Box Office Binger, and our Instagram and Threads page at Box Office_Bingers. You can find our lovely faces on our YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook, TikTok, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram pages where we post all the reels over there. Just short snippets of little teases, as well as kind of snippets of kind of the certain parts of the episode, and just really excuses. Look at these handsome devils you got going on here. Like, look at that. You can see all of our look at these guys. You can also see all of our movie reviews on our Letterboxd. Thank you for going back to it.
It's like, he's struggling.
Our Letterboxd, he's struggling. Let's go back. Our Letterboxd page is all of our movie reviews there, and I always keep forgetting this one, but Spotify for podcasters is also, you can see our lovely faces there as well, because it posts the audio and the video on Spotify. So you two for the price of one over there. But yeah, all the fun is over there, as well as entertainment news, as well as Movie Showed on Monday, what's new to stream every Friday, as well as every month. So much content over there. So much. So exciting. So go follow it if you're not already are. Like to thank each and every one of you for listening to us talk about movies each and every week. Really do appreciate it. Come back next week for more movie fun. You're not going to regret it. And for that, I've been your host, Matt Diaz.
Been Ernesto Santos. See ya.